Shalom, everyone, and with this week comes the end of a book of the Torah and also the end of a year, 2020. The year that will probably be best known for, what was the designer mask that someone wore. That's been crazy. So, hey, before we get into the book of Genesis, I just want to look back a little bit and say a special thank you. 2020, yes. How do you describe it, really? It is one that will go down in the record books, probably until 2021, and we find that 2020 was just to get our vision toward something that might even be crazier coming along the way. But it's been a difficult year for ministries, lack of being able to travel, a number of things. This is the first year in I can't remember when, I guess 2011, that I have not been in Israel. That has not been easy. Every week as I encode the videos and I have to put a picture up, I always put up a picture to begin this and to end. It's a picture of Israel. And every week it's like, there's a memory and you can't be there, and it is what it is. And don't know if that's going to change or not. I really don't. But it's been a difficult year in many ways, financially for many people, and maybe not. Thankfully, this does not pertain to many of you. But when things happen in the world that are a little chaos or something, usually the first thing that goes off a person's budget. Even if, and many times it's not even, maybe nothing really affected them, but they get a little scared, and the first thing that goes off the budget is giving to ministries, giving to Israel, giving to the right places. So for those of you who have been so faithful, so generous in this past year, I just want to take a moment and acknowledge you and say thank you. Those words are very hollow compared to the appreciation that I really truly feel for each of you that give. Some of you, it's different amounts, and just whatever it is. Thank you. Okay, let's move on from there. They lived happily ever after in the land of Mitzrayim in Egypt. Well, if we were reading kind of the fairy tale version of the Torah to our children or grandchildren, maybe this would be the way that it happened. They lived happily ever after. You turn the page, and there's a nice little picture there that's something painted of a family all hugging and whatever. And then you go on to the next book. Well, it doesn't quite happen that way, as this family still has a few things to deal with. Could we say it that way? And it begins by saying that Yaakov lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years, and thus Yaakov lived to be 147. Now, that's in his day. He had said to the Pharaoh, "My years have been few." To us, and how the longevity of people in our day. It seems like 130 years, and you still have quite a bit to go in enjoying children and grandchildren and everything. Imagine what those 17 years were like for the life of Yaakov. This man has endured many things. His life literally was a fight. Even before he saw the light of day, it was a fight between him and his brother Esau. He went through the battles there, the whole debacle with Lavan, the two wives, the two concubines, and then you have the antics of the 12 boys, and we've got at least one girl that we know of in the mix. There's probably quite a few others that are not being mentioned here. His life has been one of, every chapter has been one that's filled with, I wonder what's going to happen next. And now he's able to spend these last 17 years in Egypt in a time of peace. There's nothing recorded regarding him except for that he was probably enjoying his children, enjoying grandchildren. With 12 boys here, they're old enough. They've got children, probably some great grandchildren in the mix here. This could have been a family at this time that was huge. And so Yaakov has these years of peace and quiet, but yet his years will come to an end, and as they do for everyone. And in verse 30, he comes to this realization that his days on this earth, are not very long. And so he needs to set his affairs in order. I've always thought that Yaakov was given an amazing gift, a gift very similar to Moshe and a few others in Scripture, in that he was able to take time and to set his affairs, as I said, set his affairs in order, to speak these words over his children, and then die. What a great gift that was to him. And so it begins with him calling to Yosef. Yosef is still, in his mind, he's the boy that I can trust. Yosef has proven himself out through the years. Yaakov has sat back and probably, he was the patriarch of Egypt in that day. The thought process is there. I'm not going to go into all of that, but what he must have gone through just walking around in the streets of Goshen, or if he was taken back to the Pharaoh or places. This man was a man that was honored for not really doing anything except for being the father of this boy, this man now of Yosef. And so in his mind, Yosef has proven himself out, and he's the one that he trusts. And he says to him, I'm going to be dying soon. The end of my life is coming. And I want you to make a covenant with me. It's the placing of the hand under the thigh. I want you to make a covenant, swear an oath to me that you will not allow for my bones to be buried here in Mitzrayim. And so Yosef, there's no question in his mind. He just says, yes, of course. But the meaning of the whole account here is so rich, in that though Yaakov was seeing his family raised in Egypt, he was seeing the fruitfulness. He was seeing this amazing time of peace. I mean, the time that he had lived in Canaan, modern day Israel, had been one of a lot of turmoil, from Esau to everything that went on there, the death of his wife Rachel. It seems like, okay, this is a place that I've found the first moment of peace in my whole life. Why not just go ahead and be buried here? But no, he never forgot about the covenant. He never forgot about the stories that he heard probably in the evenings with his grandfather Abraham, with his father Isaac. He never forgot about. We are a different people, and we are to live different, and we are to have a different destination. That is a revelation that many people need to get a hold of in our day. And probably in the coming months, whatever it is, we're going to find that people are going to come to that realization, I believe, more and more, maybe out of desperation, more out of desperation than anything else. But maybe the desperation will lead them to a study which will, in that they will embrace the destination that they always had in the first place. The chapter 48, I'm not going to go into this in detail. I imagine Barry Phillips will be doing that on his 10-minute Torah this week, or has done. I haven't caught up with Barry's teaching yet. He might do that also on Shabbat. So I'm just going to say a few words about this. That in this is a prophetic event that is happening. This is not just about the blessing of two children, but it is an event that even today we are walking out some of the prophetic nature of this event, of the laying on of hands of Ephraim and Manasseh, of the significance of Yaakov adopting them and as if they are his, that we will see the tribe of Yosef being split into the two tribes of Ephraim and Manasseh as they walk through Scripture, each one of them having their own prophetic scenarios that they're walking, and then we'll come back together in the end. So Yosef, as he brings the boys, he believes, wait a minute, Yaakov is going to place his hands upon them, is going to speak the blessing, but he crosses his hands, putting his right hand, the hand of the firstborn blessing, onto the head of Ephraim. And Yaakov is like, wait a minute, this didn't work out real good, Dad. When this scenario was happening to you and your brother, look what happened in their lives. But Yaakov understands this is the way it has to be. And Manasseh, his name actually means to forget. And so he actually accepts that this is the will of the Almighty for his life, for him to embrace his younger brother as his older brother, who is now receiving the blessing and the responsibility that goes along with that blessing. Accepting things in life that at the time do not seem to make sense, accepting things that you look at it and say, well, I think it should work out a little bit better than this. But it will only be as years pass that the boys will figure out the reasons for this, the same as it is for us. You can look back at your own life, at events that have happened to you, and say, back then I would have done it different. But where I am today, I see the wisdom that the Almighty had and still does have in order to place me where I needed to be in this moment. There is one part of a verse that I want to bring out here, is that as he speaks these blessings over the boys, he says in verse 15, then he blessed Joseph, the Elohim of whose presence my father Abraham and Isaac lived, the Elohim who has been my own shepherd all my life long to this day, and it goes on from there. So he speaks this blessing into Yosef of basically he blessed Yosef by speaking a reality of his own life into Yosef. Is that really the blessing that we should be passing on to our children, our grandchildren to begin with? The greatest blessing that we can pass on and give into their life is the reality of what our life has been, our relationship has been with the Almighty. And the number one thing that comes to the mind of Yaakov is that he has been my shepherd. Now, Yaakov has been a shepherd all of his life. I mean, he goes all the way back to Lavan. He understands. He learned through the years what it meant to be a shepherd, a protector. That here was this defenseless animal that's not extremely bright to begin with, and he has had to be everything to those sheep that they needed for their very survival. And then in the process of that, he begins to realize that the Almighty has been the same to him, in that him being a shepherd to his sheep was about teaching him who the Creator was, who this one that has entered into covenant with him, who that being is. The same principle holds true over in Psalm 23, that Adonai, Yudhevave, is my shepherd, is what David said. He, in shepherding his sheep, the benefit, the benefit of being a shepherd sometimes is not really, is not a long list. Okay, let's just put it that way. Today we would call that person a pastor. Okay, someone asked me a few days ago, well, I was talking to them and they said something about, what have you done in life? I was a pastor. Well, kind of once a pastor, always a pastor. And, even though I don't have per se a building to go to and everything, we do have a small group that meets every couple of weeks in our house. But the idea of pastor is still very much a part of my life. The idea of a shepherd is very much a part of my life. Sometimes you can kind of sit back and say, I'm not seeing just really tremendous benefit of this thing. But then you find that the greatest benefit of that position that you've been called to is that it's taught you about who the Almighty is. And I guess that to me would be the greatest benefit of a role of shepherd, of pastor, is it's taught me. It's kind of like the same as if you're a father. Okay, one of the greatest benefits of being a father is that your children will teach you how to relate to your father. I know that's something that happened in my life. All right, so I'm going to leave that alone, and I want to go over to chapter 49, spend most of our time there. Chapter 49, Yaakov called for his sons and said, "Gather yourselves together, and I will tell you what will happen to you in the Akarit Hayamim, or in the last days." So is he speaking to the boys then? Is he speaking to generations to come? Is he speaking to us today? The answer, of course, would be yes. But literally, he's speaking, we could look at it like this: he is speaking through them and into us. That he's really speaking more, as the boys are there in their presence, but he's speaking more to us today than he was to them then. So we need to learn from these chapters, this chapter of Scripture, and I'm going to go through it a little fast. There is a teaching on my website, jointohashem.org. You can go to audio teachings, audio series. There's about 4 or 5 hours that I've done on this. Now, I will tell you that the last time I taught this was many years ago. We're talking about over 10 years ago. So, there may be some things that are out of date that I said. There may be some things that I've changed my mind about. I don't know, because that's all about growth. So if you'd like a little bit more detail and an overlay of this chapter and the end of Devarim, Deuteronomy, it might be worth your while. Okay, 5 more hours of me, just what everybody needs, right? Yeah, right. Okay, we'll move on. Assemble yourselves and listen, sons of Yaakov. Pay attention to Israel, your father. Now, the two words here, the two names for this man are very, very important. That he is, when we see the word Yaakov, is talking about the man in the physical realm. When we see the word or the name Israel, is talking about the spiritual realm. So what he's saying here is, assemble yourselves and listen, you sons which are still operating in more of the natural realm. your thinking, from what I've been able to watch in these years, is you're still in this natural realm, but pay attention to me as I speak to you from a spiritual realm. So what is Yaakov, Israel, doing is he's approaching these boys where they are, but he's calling them to another level, a higher level. Great life lesson there in this one portion, in this one verse, is that, and this is something that I tried to do, is you want to meet people where they are, but you don't want to ever leave them where they are. It's like raising children, or again, as you know, in a pastoral sense, you have to, you know, one of your children, one of your grandchildren, something, you know, if they're 5 years old, you can't speak to them like they have, you know, 20, 30 years of maturity behind them. You have to accept them where they are, but then you try to move them past that into a place of maturity. One of our grandsons was very attached to his binky, okay, his pacifier. Well, he just had a 2-year birthday the other day, and mommy decided, you know, it's about time for a 2-year-old. Well, the last time she tried that, he actually would, when, you know, he would take it out of his mouth and he'd hide it. He actually hid it in his car seat one time so that mommy couldn't find it, and then grabbed it back. So he was extremely attached to this thing. And so as he turned 2 years old, it was, well, we've got to mature this kid, because you don't want a 10-year-old kid walking around with a pacifier in his mouth, right? She had to meet him where he was and then give him the opportunity to mature and give him what was needed to mature. Kind of a crazy little illustration, but you know, for me at least it makes sense. I don't know if it does for you or not. So let's go through these boys, and I want to give you a rundown of each of them in 1 or 2 words. Okay, we're going to try to do it in like 1 word, 2 words. And this is not really, you know, it's not going to be a real in-depth teaching, of course, but this is what we have for the time allotted. Reuben, my firstborn, and I'm going to let you just read through each one of these on your own. I'm not going to do that. Reuben is a man of, the one word we could put is compromise, okay? This is a man who, he compromised in the time of his brother. Phone ringing. Good, Kathy got it. Sometimes usually I'd take it and put it under the couch somewhere, but I didn't today. So Reuben is a man of compromise. We see that he compromised with Yosef. We see that he compromised with his father's concubine. So, and let me tell you like this first before we get into more of it. The words spoken here by Yosef, or by Yaakov, these are words spoken to 12 tribes, 12 different boys. But I think that if we will look at them, we will find in each of them some of the same tendencies that we deal with. But as you really study them out, and maybe that's where the 5 hours of teaching would do good, as you really study them out, you find that there's something about one tribe, or maybe 2 tribes, that really speaks to you, speaks to me on a greater level. Because after all, when we look at the New Jerusalem, what do we see? We see 12 gates. And on those 12 gates is the names of the 12 tribes. So what's that teaching us? That when we enter in, that we will have a tribal identity. In the inheritance of the land in the millennium, there is tribal identity. This is going to be a shock. Okay, this is going to be an absolute shock to most people when they find out that they were grafted into Israel to begin with, And the church was something that was kind of man-made, and Constantinian Christianity really has nothing to do with this book, but it was because they accepted a different identity, but got him in the end. I don't understand the grace of the Almighty. That's way beyond my pay grade. But there will be a place of revelation. And this place of revelation will be, guys, in Messiah, in covenant, you were never grafted into the Baptist church or the Church of God or whatever, or, whichever 43,000 something denominations there are. You were grafted into Israel. And in being grafted into Israel, you have a tribal identity, the same as we will see in the book of Exodus with the Egyptians joining the mixed multitude, okay? All right, need to move on. So you're going to see things about your own life as you go through, and I challenge you to not just run through it, but actually stop and think about it as you go through. So Reuben is a man of compromise. We all have to deal with this thing of compromising. Are we going to stand for truth? And if we stand for truth, are we going to stand the right way? Which is Simeon and Levi, okay? Infamous for their time of banding together in Shechem, okay? How'd that one turn out in the end? And we go over to Shimon Kepha, Simon Peter in the Gospels. He's the one that's, you want me to call down fire from the heavens? Believe me, I'll never be given that gift of calling fire down from the heavens. There'd be little smoky places all over around us. I mean, it just would happen. So, because Reuben on one hand is very compromising, but then we go over to Simeon and Levi. They're very impulsively violent. They're black and white, and I mean I really relate here. I really relate to black and white, and my wife is going, yeah, I know that. I relate to black and white, but there has to be sometimes you can go after something with the right intent, but it didn't turn out right, because Simeon's name means to hear. So maybe there's something that needs to be done, but you need to wait and hear from the Father of how it needs to be done. And that's one of the traits that Simeon needs to figure out. And that's why he was scattered into the other tribes, is so that he could begin to learn their wisdom. Judah, the scepter will not depart from Judah. He's given the place of headship, that the Messiah will come through his genealogy. Is this because in the whole encounter with Yosef that he was the one who took it upon himself, the position of the firstborn, walked in that position, and because of this, was that the test for Judah? Was to see if he would step up to the plate, as it were. Would he step up to the place of leadership within this family, or just revert back to where he was of, well, let's just sell them all off into something else? Zebulun is one that is very, very dear to me, in that he lives at the seashore with ships anchoring along the coast and his borders at Zidon. The one word of Zebulun is a protector. Okay, any person that's a pastor, a shepherd, a father, a mother, there must be a little bit of Zebulun in you. The opposite part of that is that Zebulun tends to kind of hold in too tight. Okay, Zebulun is live at the seashore, ships anchoring in his harbor is more of the way that would be put out into a picture. And so Zebulun wants to keep those that he has been entrusted as their shepherd. He wants to keep them in the harbor, okay, because they're safe in the harbor. Don't let them outside of the harbor because they may be in danger. So Zebulun, though the tendency is the protector, it can also go over into controlling in such a way that the people that are within Zebulun's care are not able to actually find themselves in life. Okay, Issachar, Issachar's banner is the donkey. We go back to the infamous story of the mandrakes. Okay, he is a product of an encounter, basically a business deal. Okay, and so his banner is the donkey, kind of the burden bearer. Issachar is the one who is first on the scene, is to get the work done, is the last one to leave, and then is volunteering to be there the next morning at daylight in order to help get things done. All right. The problem with Issachar is that because Issachar was born through that business deal, Issachar has a problem with self-worth. You know, a donkey is really one of the most humble animals, but is one of the strongest animals, and one that is, I mean, you know, it just does what it's told to do most of the time. It can be a little stubborn along the way, but its basic tendency is to be the one that bears the burdens for others so they don't have to, so they can be freed up. But Issachar's downfall is doing this to try to prove my self-worth instead of understanding that you already have self-worth. The tribe of Dan means the judge, and Dan is a very interesting tribe as we would follow into the rest of the Tanakh, that Dan was given inheritance in what is now modern day Gaza. The Philistines were there. Dan would not take it upon himself the courage to fight and drive out the Philistines, causing a number of things to happen in Israel later on. Dan instead decided he wanted a different inheritance, would go up to what is now Tel Dan in the northern Galilee, and would be the first tribe to be assimilated into the nations even before the rest of the northern kingdom. Dan is not found. When we go over to Revelation, we do not see the tribe of Dan listed there. Dan is the only one in which there is a prayer for him, and it says in verse 18, I wait for, or I long for, your deliverance, Adonai. So Yaakov is actually praying for the deliverance of this man, of this tribe, that he will step up to the place that he is called to. We do see Dan restored in the time of the millennium. You know, if there's anything that's needed today in the family of Israel, okay? I would not just say Messianic or Hebrew roots, but the family of Israel as a whole is those that would step up to judge. Okay, in Israel today, in the modern day Israel, in the Jewish people, there's a call for the Sanhedrin. Okay, and there's those that would say, well, we don't need that. Yes, we do. We do need people who will judge what is right and wrong. I mean, what is a society? Look today at America. What is happening in the judicial system today? It's literally fallen apart. And what do we see? We see criminals on the streets. We see criminals being let out of jail. We see that the sentences are not being carried out. Why? Because there's a breakdown in the judgment. You want to restore society? Restore honest judgment to a society. So Dan being taken out of the family of Israel has been detrimental. because we lose the ability to discern what is right and wrong. May Dan be restored sooner than later. Gad. Gad is a troop. Gad's worst enemy is Gad. One of the most, one of the famous Gadites is Shaul, King Shaul. Not Shaul. Elijah. Okay, Elijah was of the Gadarenes. It goes back to, you have to kind of trace that back a little bit, but either up or down. Okay. Either, standing, calling down fire, or running from Jezebel. I think I can understand that. But it's his worst enemy is himself, because he's down on himself. A troop will troop on him, but he will troop on their heel. And so when Gad overcomes himself, Gad becomes an incredible warrior. Okay, but he's unsure of himself at first. Asher's an amazing tribe of people, and Asher, very, very, just like Naphtali, basically like Gad, very, very simple. Asher's food is rich. He will provide food fit for a king. It's the saying of the royal dainties, is I think how King Jimmy actually translated that. It will bring forth royal dainties. Now, I'm not much of a royal dainty person, okay? When I was in Belgium, in Germany, you go around, you see these little tarts, and it's like, a half a bite for me. Give me a good jelly-filled donut, and I'm pretty good. But I can appreciate because the taste sensations of those little, how do you get so many flavors, so much beauty? I mean, I've taken pictures of them when I was in Belgium. It's amazing that someone would spend that amount of time for something that little, for like a half a bite, and you eat it in, 3 seconds, it's gone. It took this guy, 30 minutes or so to put that thing together. But it's about the richness of something that's so small. Asher is one, the tribe of Asher is a people that maybe can sit in a meeting, and during a midrash, all of a sudden they just offer like one word or a small sentence, and everybody's like, what? What did you just say? Say that again, please, because it's those powerful small morsels that come forth. And this is the tribe of Asher. Asher, if we were to look at the tribes according to Pooh Bear, and I've actually done this in the past, but Tigger is Asher. He's a happy tribe. Trace that all the way over into the book of Deuteronomy too. So does that have something to do with why I have a Tigger cup? I don't know. I just have it because I do. It's been part of this program for probably 15 years or so. Tigger has been a part. So, okay, moving on. Naphtali is a doe set free. So Naphtali is about grace. There's something, we have deer that, I have a deer feeder right outside of my window, and we take Kaya, our dog, up on the hill to neighbor's property up there that it's a vacation home. And so we take her up there, and many times there's deer that are feeding out in the pasture. I walked up there just a few days ago taking Kaya, and I looked up, and Kaya had not run in front of me quite as much as she normally does, so I got an opportunity to get up to the kind of the crest there, and just over the fence was I saw the image of a deer. It was a little doe that I've seen numerous times here, but I'm probably 200 yards from this deer, and Kaya's pretty still. She's behind a tree. I'm about halfway behind a tree, and all of a sudden this deer just looks up. It's like there was an awareness. There was awareness that I was there. Naphtali is the person that sends me, You know, I was praying for you the other day, and I saw this in a vision. Okay, that's the Naphtali. There, in the I've learned to appreciate Naphtali through my life, but I have to tell you, sometimes they still kind of weird me out. Okay, because they see a lot of things, and I'm going, I don't have a clue what you're talking about. But I've had to come to the place of Naphtalis that I know, that I trust. And that's a big thing. There's very few of those, because as a deer, they're not known for staying in boundaries. A deer will jump most any fence. It's amazing to watch an animal in the deer family, a kudu antelope, can from standing still jump over a jeep. That's happened in Africa. I've watched moose in Alaska, who are part of the deer family. I've watched a full-grown male moose with a 60-inch spread antlers clear a 6-foot-tall cedar fence in somebody's backyard. How in the world they do that? But they don't tame real well. Okay, they're always going to push that boundary of that fence. They're aware, but the tendency is to not operate within boundaries. Naphtali needs to subject itself. The family of Naphtali needs to subject itself to the boundaries of the Torah and to those who would be trying to provide wisdom for them in what they're seeing. Okay. But graceful, you know, I don't know about you. There's not a lot that's more graceful than watching a deer that's not. It's just kind of, you know, bounding off into the pasture a little bit. It is an amazing sight to see. Naphtali is one that brings forth an awareness of what's going around us and reveals to us the grace and mercy that the Father is showing upon his family. Yosef, okay, Yosef gets a number of verses here, and Yosef is all about fruitfulness. If we, looking at the whole scenario of Ezekiel 37, the two sticks of the two kingdoms, the two families, the southern kingdom, northern kingdom, all of that. I know this statement bothers some people, but I got to go with it anyway. That I do not believe that until you understand. I know there's been a lot of misuse, there's been a lot of abuse, there's been a lot of misunderstanding regarding the teaching of the northern kingdom, southern kingdom, not a genealogical issue, but a spiritual paradigm, a spiritual prophetic picture that is being painted for us right here. Without at least a brief understanding of what is happening with Ephraim and Manasseh, with Yosef, the northern kingdom, the stick that is in his hand, you really don't understand the scripture at the place you could from Genesis to Revelation. Because it is about a family that was separated and is being brought back together as one in the hands of the Father. Go back and look at Ezekiel 37. Hanok talks about this quite often, that it will be, put a stick in your hand, this hand, put the other stick in this hand, and bring them close, but they will only be together in the Father's hand. It will only be when the Father wraps his arms around us that the family will truly understand the amazing grace that has been to take this family from being separated and bring it back together. Go back and you can look at that and study that a little bit more on your own. So it's about fruitfulness. The house, the northern kingdom assimilated in the nations, would be involved in paganism. It's a prophetic scenario of what I believe today to be the so-called Christian church is the house of Yosef, and needs to at one time will come back from their dispersion, from their exile, understanding where home is, understanding the word that they are called to live. And at that point, that will be, and it's the prayer. If you go to Yochanan, John chapter 17, when Yeshua prayed that they may be one. Okay, there were no Baptists and Methodists and Presbyterians and stuff to be one. Who was he talking about? There was not a person on the scene in that day that was saying, I don't have a clue what he's saying. No, they all would have known that they would be one, would be the tribes, because they had understood it from the Tanakh. Binyamin, okay, quickly. Binyamin is a challenge to mature. A ravenous wolf, devouring the prey, in the evening dividing the spoil. The ravenous wolf that Benjamin is, the most famous Benjamite, two of them, King Saul and Saul of Tarsus. Okay, those are two Benjamites. And in Saul of Tarsus we see, what was he? He was a ravenous wolf in the beginning, but in the end he was dividing the spoil. And that's why we have his books and his teachings. The challenge for Benjamin, and Benjamin I see as an end time scenario of a remnant, is to quit devouring each other, to quit fighting between each other, and begin to mature. That's the challenge for Benjamin. Now, Yaakov will die. He will request to be buried in the cave of Machpelah. His beloved wife Rachel is buried at Ephrat. Why not? Let me be buried there. That's the beloved wife. No, I think and this is speculation on my part. There's a transformation that's happened in his life, that he has seen that Leah was really always the beloved wife. And so he requests that he be buried with his ancestors, the cave of Machpelah, going back possibly all the way to Adam and Eve. But I want to be buried next to Leah, because now I do see. It's sometimes not until someone's death that you really see the truth of their life. And in chapter 50, in the last chapter, chapter 50, I've got a minute to do this. Going up to verse 15, realizing their father's dead, they came to a conclusion that they needed to have a little private discussion with Yosef, and came up with this cockamamie story that, hey, before our dad passed away, he brought us together and said to us, after I die, you need to go have a little talk with your brother, because maybe he does still have some bitterness there, and he's just waiting for me to pass away, and then you boys are going to get it. Now, that conversation never happened, but that's conversation, well, let me say it this way. That conversation never happened with Yaakov. Okay, that conversation did happen, and happened in detail between the boys, because there was a lack of trust that Yosef had truly forgiven them. If there's something we need to deal with today, ladies and gentlemen, there's a lack of trust. A lack of trust in the family of Israel. A lack of trust of, I want to fix you instead of I need to fix me. If I can just make you like me, then everything will be okay. A lack of mistrust, because we've all been stabbed in the back. We've all had all kinds of issues, but somehow we've got to get through this thing, and with the Father's help, begin to trust one another. The days ahead of us, it may be our very life. Shavua Tov, and by the way, Happy New Year. Whatever, Gregorian calendar it still is. So may you have a blessed, prosperous week and year. Bezrat Hashem, God willing, see you again next week. And according to Scripture, Hazak Hazak, Vanik Hazak. Be strong, and let us be strengthened.
Yivarechecha Adonai v'yishmarecha Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yichunecha. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yasem lecha shalom.